Well, I think I was just on the brink of becoming self-aware of what happened to me personally through my childhood, and I was just on the brink of starting to, you know, get reconnect with my inner child, as it were. Um, but at that time I didn't know that. But I do realize I realized later I had actually started the process already, because I'd had to go. I'd been for hypnotherapy and stuff like that. So, so yeah, I had to go for hypnotherapy to be able to say my name because I was stammering. So, and then I understood through this hypnotherapy that because I was so badly treated as a child, and so my name, it was hard for me to say my name. That I had such a bad self-identity, as it were. So yeah, that is what's well, yeah, I couldn't say anything to do with myself. But this suddenly happened to me, because of an experience that I'd had that sort of triggered it, you see. And then suddenly, because in my childhood I stammered really badly, but then suddenly I was like, um, it all came back, in my mid-20s, and I couldn't speak. And it was getting worse and worse. I couldn't even say my son's name when I took him into nursery, like it was really bad. It got really bad. And then it gets worse because you're sort of panicking because you're thinking, oh, you know, am I going to be able to say my name? So I had to go for hypnotherapy because I was starting polytechnic. And so, yeah, I went for these sessions of hypnotherapy, and I literally had this mind experience where it was like the heel on my shoe being suddenly straight. Like I'd been walking crookedly, and then suddenly my heel was straightened, and I could speak. I could say, "Deborah, my name is Deborah Mahmoudieh," and so I'd been through that, but obviously, I hadn't been through the trauma yet. I'd sort of done a superficial heal because it was the heel on a shoe. It's not my actual heel that's been healed, if you see what I mean. So, yeah, 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 yeah. So I'd sort of been fixed enough to be able to go into the world and actually speak, to be part of Babylon, as it were. But I obviously I wasn't healed in that sense. So, but so I was at Polytechnic anyway by that time, and I was studying history, and I had it was history of art, design, and film. It was a great course. So anyway, we had this lecture. This woman came in to speak. I forget her name, and she'd written this book, and it was about how cities offer women freedom. That women now are free to be voyeurs of society and be part of cafe society and just, you know, be a voyeur basically. So in this lecture, so she said this, and and it was all about, how the cities gave women freedom to be a voyeur, you see. So yes, just to sit and observe society and, you know, write poems about it or whatever. So, yeah, so anyway, at the end, she said, "Is there any questions?" And I was like, "Yeah." Well, and I said to her, "Well, you know that you said that cities offer women freedom, and I understand on the level that you mean, but there is also the other level, the practical level for women, such as, like breastfeeding facilities and stuff like that. We still don't have those, and women are expected to change babies in toilets and things. And so anyway, she just stood there gawping at me. And then one of my lecturers who was part of my course, she suddenly stood up and she said, she turned around and said to me, "Well, women don't have to have babies, do they?" And so then she just immediately moved on to the next question. Well, I was absolutely so perplexed by that. I thought, excuse me, well, women, babies, what, they don't have to have babies, but 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 they do, and you're talking about freedom for women in the city, then it should be freedom for all women, whatever they're going through. They might be pregnant or whatever, but there's not proper facilities for them. So anyway, when I got home, I was absolutely so incensed about it. And so anyway, I drew this diagram, and it was like the top part was a triangle in a circle with a circle surrounding it, and the triangle was meant to represent the male, and the inner circle the female, and the outer circle nature. So, and then it moved down to a 3 o'clock stage where it was the circle, and the triangle was starting to come out of the female circle, and then it went across to like a 9 o'clock where the triangle had completely come out of the circle. So it was like the inner circle, and then the triangle imposed on it, and then it was still encased in nature, the outer circle. But then at the 6 o'clock position, it was just the triangle with the circles inside it, and so that was the stage. So then from there, you see, the only way forward is up, and that's back to the original thing, which I've called back to Godhead. For some reason, I don't know why. But anyway, so I called that back to Godhead. And so I thought, well, the Easter holiday's coming up. David's going to his dad's because we split the holidays. I had the Christmas, he was having Easter. So David was going for 3 weeks to stay with his dad. And I was going to be on my own. And my partner at that time, he was going away for a couple of weeks. So I thought, great, I've got time then, and I'm just going to write. I'm going to explain that diagram. So anyway, I started writing it, Freedom in the City, and it was over the Easter period that I was writing this piece I called it Freedom in the City. And first I explained what I meant by freedom and what I mean by city. And anyway, so I went through it about the city and this, that, the other, until I got to the point, because I was exploring the gender division, you see, like why it is that male and female there's that power imbalance between them, and it isn't, it's detrimental to the women and children. And so to me, I just feel that I felt and still feel it's a really unnatural thing, because a patriarchy is about caring for one's children. So, what, you're going to repeatedly damage the mothers that that are going to be there expected to care for your children, or you're going to repeatedly damage your children. You're going to behave like a beast instead of a human being. And why are we like this? Where does it come from? And so through the course of this writing, which was just for me, it wasn't for publication, it was just because I needed to understand. And so through the course of this writing, I understood that uh, we are actually just gender constructs based on the Roman model of female and male, and that, what it takes to be male, what it means to be female, and that these are constructs, like the female, she's weak, she's over emotional, gets hysterical, blah blah blah. But like the male, no, he's strong, he is in control of his emotions, and well, in fact, he doesn't really have any emotions. The true male doesn't have emotions. But, so a lot of the males that do have emotions and are constantly struggling to keep them down, they are going to be the ones that are going to be violent and aggressive, you see, because they are struggling to keep their emotions in because they're a man. And they might not even be consciously aware that that is what they're doing, because that's the problem, you see. That's why people need therapy, so they can understand themselves, because a lot of people, they're not even consciously aware that they. Yeah, yeah, so you've got these constant battles because the two constructs that have been separated by, let's face it, Rome was built on a wolf consciousness, you see, because Romus and Remus that established Rome were suckled by wolves. They were raised by wolves, and they established a wolf type power structure. Like where you get your alpha male, and the the young children didn't count for anything in a Roman society. A child under 3, I think it was, never counted for nothing. You could kill it or do what you want with it, and nobody's gonna bat an eyelid. Yeah, and yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they have this, like, thing that, children, don't really count for anything. So anyway, so I realised that we're in these constructs. They don't they only work for a governing body, in terms of dividing the sexes, and also making sure that men remain, the bulk of men are powerless, you see, because you see, on balance, you know, uh, male the woman is another side of man, you see. So if one side is weakened, then, like, the woman has been weakened by the state psychologically still, and even physically, because we still haven't got our full rights. So the woman is weakened, so that means every man is crippled. And then he's going to blame her because she's weak. And all of this is going to happen on a subliminal level. It's not going to happen like, oh yes, I understand I'm crippled and it's her fault. But that's just how it works. That's how you get this misogyny, you see. But yes, yes, yes. So it's like, so, she's the reason why I've got so many problems. And then you've also got this inbred story about Eve, being bad and all this lot, and that it's her fault, that man's downfall. So you've got that going on as well, which it's a program. It goes in, people don't even know it's whirring away in the background there. And then so, yes, so the woman is weak in this society, on every level. She's gonna be weaker because she's carrying a womb, and that is being ignored, so, like, there's no menstrual facilities for women. they don't get time off work during menstrual periods and stuff like this. There's nothing there for when women are going through the menopause, you know. So, the womb is just like put to one side, and it's like, yes, you can be an equal member of the workforce, but we'll just forget about your womb, apart from when you're pregnant, and then you're entitled to some maternity leave, and that's it, you know. So so, you know, when you're on that level, so of course women are going to be weakened by that, and the males are going to see the women as weak. Whereas before you had these Roman constructs imposed on us in Celtic, if we go back to Celtic Christian society, men and women were on an equal status. Women were very highly revered for their work and the things that they did. They could be warriors if they wanted to be. They were sometimes spiritual leaders. So, you know, and in that society, the child was considered absolutely pure and, holy. They were actually given the same respect like you might give to a priest or something. But it's once that society, once the Celtic society had taken on Christianity, so then the Celtic Christian churches, they had an abbot, but they had an abbess who was a head of the church, and she would go round and see who needs what. Like if somebody was in need of something, she'd find somebody who can give it, that type of stuff. Like Saint Hilda of Whitby. She was the abbess of Whitby. And then in 665, they had a synod at Whitby where they wanted to discuss whether they were going to stick with Celtic Christianity or they were going to submit to the Roman Church, because that had just been set up, whether they were going to submit to the Roman Church's version of Christianity. And so the Celtic Christianity incorporated everything like Easter and the solstices and all that type of stuff. That was all part of Celtic Christianity. And, so we still celebrated the equinoxes, May Day, all those things. And the Celtic cross represents the 4 equinoxes within the circle of the solar year, you see. Yeah. I mean, the resurrection, yeah, is the sun, after the shortest day, when the sun rises on the 3rd day after that, that is that is the birth, yes. So, yeah, we all live and die on the cross of life, on that cross of life. That's what it is. Yes, yeah. I don't think it really matters because, the Romans made up so much of, uh, Jesus. There's just, like, shreds of it, facts left. Um, yeah, 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 yeah. So, anyway, so you've got that. So, the Celtic cross is a cross of life, and then in comes the Roman Church with their actual cross of death, where they're trying to, um, they've made they've basically sanctified an instrument of Roman torture. They've turned it into an icon of wor for worship before. And, you know, the idea of putting a man on that as well, a man tortured, on hanging on this cross, um, I think it strikes terror into the hearts of people. I know as a child, I didn't like it. I didn't like crucifixes. I didn't like looking at them. It just made me uncomfortable to look at that figure on the cross. And, so, you know, so to have that, and to me, that's the cross of death. It is a cross of death. It is a symbol of the usurpation of Jesus, who actually came for the Jewish people. He was a Jewish man, and he says in the Bible, you know, I came for the Jews. I'm here for the Jews, because a Roman woman had touched his robe, I think, and she wanted to be healed, or somebody else to be healed. And he said, your faith has healed us. Or one woman wanted to see him, that was it. And he said, I am here for the Jews, not for the Romans. But I think he did still help that lady. But, you know, he was there for the Jewish people because he was trying to help them, to liberate them from the Roman occupation, and what that had done to Judaic faith, which one of them was uh, making people buy temple coins to go and pray, which was a Roman tradition. That's what Romans did. You had to buy a gold coin in order to go and pray, to get blessings from God. So basically, you need to be rich and you need to have money to be able to get blessings from God. And they did that. And that's why Jesus went absolutely crazy in the bit where the money exchanges, they were exchanging. And people would take produce and all kinds of stuff. Uh, they were making a profit on the difference for these coins. And that's why Jesus just went crazy in there, because it's like, this isn't what the temples were made for. They weren't made. People previously used to go and give gifts of sheep or things to God, you know, to the temple, to the and then that was for the priests, you know, that were in there, the rabbis. But it was turned into a whole new thing when the Romans were there. And so Jesus, that's why he was preaching to people on a mountain, you know, on a mount, or telling people that, look, you can be baptized, cleansed of your sins just by being baptized in the water, and somebody say a prayer over you that you're being cleansed by, for God. So all these things were free. People could do these things for free without paying anybody anything. You know, they didn't have to give any fee. Oh, yeah. Yes, yes, I think that we should. So anyway, this is the kind of stuff that, you know, I was going into at the time. And so when I finished this writing, I had like this epiphany, because I'd come to the point where I realised that on a subliminal level, men were always going to blame women for the fact that life's horrible, that they've got to grow old and die. And that's it. So you're never going to change. Nothing's ever going to change, because ultimately, man has to die. And that's her fault, you know. And so, like, why did you bring me in the world just so I've got to die? Yeah, yeah. And so I thought, and it was like, suddenly, it was like this thing came into my head, like, and it was literally like a light. And I thought, oh my gosh, yes, no, we don't. There's quantum energy. We don't die. So just our bodies die, but the quantum energy leaves our body, and our thoughts are photons, light. It's all electrical light going on in our brain. And once that all stops, all that energy does not die. It leaves the body, definitely. So it was like, oh my gosh, we do have a soul. And then it was like, oh my gosh, there is a God, God is real because there is that light source. And just prior to me having uh, this experience, that I was writing about and everything, I'd had a couple of lucid dreams, where I've actually woken up in my dream and realized that it's a dream. And, one of them, there was a cherry tree, like cherry blossom, and I could feel it and touch it. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I looked at the sky and the view in the distance, and everything was so perfect. And I thought, wow, my brain has made this. This is just all light. And yet everything was really real. I could feel the petals. I could feel cool breeze on my face. So I sort of started to realize that, well, actually, then there could be a quantum hard light paradise, exactly the same as this, where you can feel and touch things. And when I woke up, I just thought, what's real then? Is this really real? Is this a dream? Because I was there, I was in my bed, but I was in this other place, and I could touch and feel, and I could have just been there really. But, obviously then I wake up and it's like, well, is this a dream? Which part is real? So I was a bit, um, so I did know about quantum energy, you see. I did understand because I do love physics. And so, I really understood quantum energy because that also explained, a supernatural experience that I had when I was pregnant with David, where, I'll just briefly explain it. I walked into what Afsel's family, his dad's family member house, and there was just like this toolbox on the floor. It looked like a toolbox. It was big, but it was that sort of shape. It was metal. And I just thought it was a toolbox. But then something in my brain actually, while I was thinking it was a toolbox, I got a vision suddenly. A woman, an elderly woman's body dismembered in this box. And I just looked at it and I just thought, that's ridiculous. The box is far too small and it's ridiculous. Why on earth have I got this horrible image in my head? And I thought, am I going mad or something? This is like a sign of madness. It surely must be. Anyway, I went in, and then my husband's cousin was saying, "Oh, did you see that box in the hallway?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "Parvin won't let it in." And I'm like, "Why?" And she said, "Well, it contains the real skeleton of a 68-year-old woman." Yeah, I know. So, can we just pause it for a minute? Some so so where were we up to? I was talking about the box, wasn't I? So, after that, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, was the box haunted?" And then I thought, no, because it wasn't a ghost. So I realized, like, the intelligence of it, that it obviously had to be quantum energy because only that could go through the box and actually observe what was inside it. So obviously something quantum energy had left my brain, but was still connected, quantumly connected to what's inside my brain. And it went into the box. It showed me what was in the box, but actually who it belonged to as well, you see, because I would not have known that it was an elderly woman. I would have just seen bones. I would have just seen a set of bones. But it actually showed me who was in the box as well. That it had actually picked up all those details just from those bones, that it picked up this elderly woman. It was just amazing. Oh gosh, no. Oh my gosh, no. If I'd have said that to Parvin, she'd just screamed crazy. That would have been in the street, honestly, it would. She would have, I mean, she already wouldn't let it in the house Can you imagine if I said that I walked in and saw that? Oh my gosh, I think poor Mahmoudieh wouldn't have been studying medicine in her house. She would have made him get a flat somewhere. No, no, there was no way that oh gosh, no. I mean, I told David's dad on the way home, but it did really, rattle me a bit, and that is why, I had to think about it. And yes, the only thing that I could understand it was some kind of quantum energy that does work because it really did happen. So, you know, of course, so at the time when it first happened, I thought it was some sort of psychosis, until Simmons said that, oh yeah, there's this elderly woman in this thing. So I thought, well, no, that wasn't psychosis then, because actually what it showed me was real. Literally the Matrix. I think it was a conscious intelligence. I think I look at the things that happened in my life, and I think it is like something was sort of showing me, preparing me for the next stage, if you see what I mean. So it goes through stages. Yeah, 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 yeah. We all have our own, unique contribution to make, I suppose. But we just do. As I've said, we are each a single raindrop, and together we are a storm to bring the rainbow into life. And that's it. And because what's the point of having a storm if you're not going to have a rainbow after it? And a lovely sunny day. And I think we're going through the storm right now, but we do need to let the rainbow shine, because I think this world is all about black and white, the black and white wars kind of thing. There's the goodies, there's the baddies. But when you look at it, on every side, there's goodies and baddies. It's just on some side, there's more baddies than goodies, and uh, that's how it is. Um, and yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it just like depends. I mean, because a lot of these new age type things that went on, children were still suffered abuse in them. I think it's a mistake to think that because people have chosen this particular lifestyle. But generally speaking, I suppose people who have become vegan out of care for animals, and there is a difference between people who become vegan just for the health, that the animal thing isn't part of their thing, but still their lifestyle is a lot kinder to nature. They've made a conscious, ethical choice as well. So, but I think the people that are have become vegan out of care for animals are, probably on the more compassionate side, And I think that is what we need to do, is to raise compassion, raise the levels of compassion, because compassion is the cornerstone of universal law. So, and that's why this society that is being, run by crazy people with no connection to higher consciousness, that's one of the things that they oppress is compassion. And that was part of the male. You see, what's been most oppressed in the male is compassion, because if they start feeling compassion for somebody, they're feeling weak. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I've got hay fever. My nose is itching like crazy. Go on. No, no. Yeah, yeah, and that's it. Yeah, being online, people like develop their own fake personas, don't they, and stuff. Mm. Oh yeah, yeah, the vegan please. As somebody called it once. But yeah, so yeah, I just you know, it was all part of the consciousness, I suppose. I mean, at the time when I had the light being experience, I'd only just become vegetarian, and so it was after the light being experience I became vegan, and that was because I learned about somebody gave me a leaflet about milk, and it was the first time I'd really connected and just thought, "Oh my gosh, they actually kill the calves and stuff like this," and I was just horrified, so that was it. I stopped drinking milk and having cheese and dairy products and stuff as well. So it was just after the light being, but I think it was because it had made me more consciously aware. Oh, right, yeah. Well, it happened about 2 weeks after I'd had this epiphany about, God and light being our souls and all that kind of thing. And so it was about 2 weeks later, um, and I got up one morning. David was still staying with his dad. It was his last week with his dad, and Chris, my partner, he'd at that time he'd gone to work, and so I got up and I've had this like energy rushing through my body, and it was like a breeze. So it was sort of going up from the ground and then round, and it was sort of like doing a twist, like a figure of eight movement around me, going up and around and around, and it was just, and it was so beautiful. It felt like bliss. Yeah, yeah. So no, it was like, I'd say it was just like a breeze rushing through me, going round and then up and then round this way and back round again. So it was doing like a figure of eight thing around me. Well, it doesn't matter. I don't think I explained it to you as well as I am doing now, but it was really strong. I mean, it was quite powerful, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, where's this come from?" Um, And I was thinking, is it because I've become is it because I've become vegetarian or something? I don't know. Anyway, I went down the stairs thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on? I could feel this thing. And I thought, well, I think I'll get some ironing done. I'd do David's uniforms because he was getting ready back for school the coming week. So I thought, I think I'll just do a bit of ironing, and maybe it'll just go away. I mean, it felt really nice, but I didn't know where it was coming from, what it was about. And so I didn't even touch. I got the ironing plug. I didn't even touch the socket. Before the plug even got to the socket, a blue flash shot out of the socket, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, maybe I better not touch anything electrical while I've got this thing going through me." You see, so I went in the kitchen and I put some rubber gloves I made myself a drink. I went and sat down. I put some music on. I thought it'll just go away. I'll just sit here, just wait for it to go away. It's very nice. Anyway, it didn't go away after about an hour. Um, and so I thought, right, I'm just going to go upstairs and lie down. You know, I'd like sorted the dog out and everything. I thought I'll just go and lie down for an hour and it'll be gone, you know. So anyway, I went upstairs, lay down on the bed. No, it just got even stronger actually. And so, you know, after about an almost an hour, I think, of being on the bed, I just thought, right, it's a beautiful day. It was a beautiful spring day, clear blue sky, blossoms on the trees. I thought, I'm going to take the dog for a walk in the local park, go through all the blossom trees. I'm just going to enjoy it. I might as well just enjoy this beautiful breezy energy, you know, like, and maybe by the time I get back, it will be gone. So I got up and I just glanced out of the bedroom window and I could see David's friend and his mum sitting on the doorstep opposite in full sunshine. And then I noticed just to the side, opposite where the old bakery was. It was quite a low building. There was a cloud in the sky just above that bakery, and one white fluffy cloud. And there were no other clouds in the sky. Otherwise, the sky was completely clear. But I could see the sun shining inside the cloud. You know, like when the cloud covers the sun, it just looked like that. And anyway, I got to the bedroom door and I suddenly stopped and I thought, oh no, that can't be the sun because at midday the sun shines from behind our house. That's why Edward and his mum are sat in full sunshine. I'm going to go and see what that is now, see what that was, because it definitely wasn't the sun. So I went back and had a look again. I could still see it was still there, sun in the cloud. So I thought, well, it must be a reflected sunbeam because, you know, um, I've heard about these that it can happen. You can have like reflected sunbeam. So I was watching it for a bit. And then I noticed that right at the centre of the reflected sunbeam, this round circle, there was some dark grey cloud swirling around very fast. So as I was looking at it, I was thinking, oh, it must be something to do with the way the sun, the impact of the sun's energy on the cloud, like how it's affecting the cloud. Like if you put a magnifying glass and it'll burn paper, the sun going through it will burn the papers. That maybe the sun has an effect on the cloud itself. So I was watching that phenomenon because I'd never seen it before, and I thought, oh yeah, that looks really interesting. So anyway, I'm watching it, and and again, I'm just about to turn away when suddenly all this swirling right at the centre of this orb of light that's inside this cloud. All of a sudden, there's like a tiny pinprick and one single golden ray of light shot out of it, like towards me. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, so it isn't a reflected sunbeam because how can, because no, it's something inside the cloud. The light is coming in from inside this cloud. So by that time, suddenly, oh, it's a UFO. Now I'm looking at a UFO. Maybe, I don't know. And then as I watched, I could see that this grey cloud had made a perfect square and more of this golden light came out of it. And I was just, yeah, sorry, there's no way that's natural. That is not natural. The square, no. And I thought, actually, perhaps I've got this strange energy running through me. Maybe I'm just having some sort of hallucination. I'm going to look away, and when I look back, it'll just be gone because there must be something mad going on in my brain. So I turned away. I could see Edward and his mum still sat out on the street, and I was like that, like literally, I'm not looking. Look back, square has got bigger. That's more golden light coming through. So anyway, I sat watching it, expecting what I don't know. And then all of a sudden the square elongated to an upright rectangle like that. And so I'm looking at the orb of light in the cloud with a rectangle opening and light, just golden light shining out of it. And so at that point I was expecting a spaceship or something to come out of it, you know. But no, instead what happened from the top of the rectangle, like and the side, so a head from the top and an arm at either side of the rectangle suddenly went like that. The head just seemed to lift up and the arms out of the rectangle. So I was looking at a figure made of light. And at that point, I was just thinking, right, and now I know I'm hallucinating. This cannot be real. So I looked away and I was waving frantically at Edward and his mum to try and get their attention to have a look, like. But no, they both of them just got up and went into the house. And so I thought, when I look back, it will be gone. This just cannot be happening. No, I look back, it's still there. And I look back just in time to see some grey cloud etching out the final folds in a robe. And I was fascinated by that. I thought, wow, so it's a light being, but it's still wearing a robe, like, and it was like this. And I could see facial features, and it had long, like wavy hair, curly hair coming down just above the shoulders, and facial features all picked out in grey cloud. Folds in the robe, the face. So anyway, we stood staring at each other, and I was absolutely astonished and really delighted as well, because I just wasn't expecting that, and it was like a confirmation of the epiphany that I'd had a few weeks before about, light energy, quantum energy. And so anyway, I don't know how long I was staring at, and then my knees felt a bit shaky, and I was thinking, am I supposed to kneel or something? But anyway, there was a desk and a table near the window, so I just sat down on this chair, and I was just watching as all of a sudden the head went down and the arms went back into the rectangle, and then when the rectangle shrunk down back to a square, and then the square shrunk, and then it went down to a prick again, and then the pinprick got covered over in grey cloud, and then the orb faded from inside the cloud, and then the whole cloud just dissipated. Yeah, yeah. It just I watched the cloud just dissipate into just totally vanished. Well, that's it, because this energy carried on till about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I was still having this energy, and I started to realise that it was afterwards, the next day, over the next few days, that I started to realise that it was a message, and because I suddenly understood all these things in the Bible, which before I couldn't understand, but now I understand, you see. And so it was like it all connected. It all connected with this light being, this energy was a message, the bliss, and it was a message of universal law of abundance in compassion. because that's the only way that we're ever going to be able to live with abundance, is when we live with compassion, because compassion is the cornerstone of universal law that upholds our human rights, animal rights, eco rights, children's rights, all those things. And but compassion is its head cornerstone. And the stumbling block is ignorance, you see. Anybody who's ignorant of the law. And I'm not talking about people who don't know the law, because, in universal law language, ignorant means willful ignorance. Otherwise people are mystified. If somebody doesn't know, they don't know, you see. Yes, people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and that is it. Whereas the law that we're living by at the moment, compassion is the stumbling block, and ignorance is the head cornerstone of their law system. You see, that's how they make all their money, get all their power. It's all based on ignorance. The bigger the ignorance, the more power and more wealth they can have, you see. But ignorance should be the stumbling block. But with compassion as the stumbling block, so all the in their so-called race, competition, psychopaths and people who really just don't care, just single-minded people, they can easily get over compassion. Compassion's not going to be a problem for them. But for people with a heart and a care and a conscience, they aren't going to be able to do the things that it takes to get to be a millionaire or a billionaire, you see. And so, uh, and that, because that legal system, it isn't an accurate legal system, and they know it isn't. So, well, yeah, I think, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, well, as I say, it isn't really about apportioning blame, because I think, like, that's the other thing with the system that we've got, which dwells on punishment. And, it's like, look, just go away with your punishments. If you ignore universal law, you will be punished, not because God has come along and said, "Oh, you bad person, now you're going to be punished." You will be punished because of the things that then happen, because you've stepped outside of the law. So you're not going to live in a very nice world. You're not going to live in a very nice life. And the people that are pushing such laws are going to be the most miserable people ever, even though they've got everything they want, everything they could possibly need, but they haven't got the spirit, you see. The spirit of God is not with them. And God isn't about a person, it's about an energy field of quantum consciousness that is super intelligent. And we can connect with that. We can be part of it. All of us, we already are. We just have to connect to it. Whereas the world out there, led by Bill Gates and co, they want to connect us all to their ridiculous electronic techno web, which, one big sun flare and it is all gone anyway. So it's like, no, because it is a battle between good and evil in that sense. But the evil is just criminal, it's criminal. It's people that ignore the law. We have to lose this concept of the devil and God. We're talking about willpower, and we're talking about consciousness and conscience, you see. And so, because we are hosts, the physical body is a host to universal quantum light being. And once that you see, outside of the body, quantum energy can do anything. It can. There are no laws really for it. But once it's in a human body and it can actually, impact the environment, then it has to live by a law, a code of ethics. And the code of ethics is, human rights. Like, you respect people's human rights. You don't judge people. You have a proper legal process. That if people do things wrong, it isn't about punishing them. It's about finding out, well, why did you do that thing wrong? What can we do to help you to live better so we can trust you to live out in society without harming yourself or anybody else? No, I've not said intention. Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, at the moment where the consciousness is, a lot of people are going to need therapy and things like that to be able to connect. But I think a lot of people will be able to just understand that, look, what you're switching on to is your real self. You step out of this character that, let's call it Babylon, because it's easy, rather than the system, right? This character that like Babylon has made of you, like, you're a milkman, you're a nurse, you're this. Oh, this is your character. You step out of that because all those things that created you before really have nothing at all to do with your inner light being body, which is absolutely pure and independent and has a care and is your conscience, and that it will be with you when your body dies. That conscience will rise. And so for all these people now that have got the conscience in the deep freeze and blah blah blah, who think that that, oh yeah, I don't have a conscience, I don't care, I couldn't care less about these people or this or that, these important things, then when their body perishes, then yes, their conscience will suddenly appear and they will have a very, well, will they ever rise into the heavenly consciousness, the hard light paradise, or will they keep coming back to earth? You know, yeah, but I realise that for the time being, we're all coming back to earth. We're all being reincarnated. We are all reincarnated souls. That's just the way it is. A lot of, I mean, I think that there are certain souls that achieve a higher level of consciousness in this life and then move on to the higher quantum levels, because there's multiple quantum consciousness levels. Um, as far as I can understand, there's about 11, I think. So you can move into the higher consciousness, but then you can also come back down to earth to perform a specific task, um, from the higher consciousness. So we've got higher consciousness people living among us all the time. Like Jesus said, I will always be with you. So Jesus is basically then being reborn and reborn and reborn again and again and again into every time. Mm, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I really do like, I've always loved Jupiter. I think it's, well, it is my favourite. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because, like, I mean, I've thought about the Holy Trinity, and I think it, and I think it is, you know, God. God the Mother, God the Father, and uh, God the Holy Child. Mm, yeah. Well, I realised that the triangle was totally wrong. You know, that in a way, I'd represent it because the male is actually square then, and it's the female that is, circular. So, yeah, the female's circular, and then because, but the man is a triangle in our society because he's had a corner cut off, you see? Well, yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, I love the Star of David. I absolutely love the Star of David. Yeah, mm, yeah, 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 mm, yeah, yeah, mm, yeah, yes, right, yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Well, he also Mary as in marry as well, isn't it? Mm, yeah, yeah, because it is like a marriage as well, but you could be right, it could be a maritime reference because Mare the sea. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think it does all connect, like conscious wise, we need to, um, as far as universal law goes. So that is the thing you see of this idea of, people are used to say a lot when I was a kid, it's all spare the rod and ruin the child was a saying. And it is a biblical thing, spare the rod and ruin the child. And but what people don't understand, yeah, what people don't understand is that the rod is the law, you see, and the child is humanity. And you spare the law and you will ruin the child because where there's no law, then people are going to do bad things. You're going to allow a bad consciousness to come through, and they are going to take it is going to take control because most of the good people aren't prepared to do the kind of things that the bad people are prepared to do because they can ignore their compassion. But when the law is in operation and working, then they don't have that option because compassion is the head cornerstone. As soon as you ignore compassion, somebody gets hurt, you've ignored something, bang, you are going to be arrested and you're going to be seen to. Not necessarily to be, not to be hurt and tortured and punished, but to be seen, what is wrong with you? Why have you ignored this thing? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It's to protect everybody. It's to protect everybody. Yeah. A staff. Yeah. 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 And compassion. So all things you remember your compassion, you know. So it's like, yeah, I could get really angry and want to throw something to get rid of that energy out of my body. But no, I've got pets. There's people around me. All right, I'll smash something in a safe place if I've really got to do that. But you think before you do it because you've got compassion at your cornerstone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But because I do, I have got so angry at things that have been happening. But And I do find it very difficult to live here, you know, um, but yes, yeah, non-human. You see, Jesus said, "Love your enemy," and you should love your enemy because your enemy's human, is a human being, and no matter what we hate, what we need to hate is just what they do. We hate what they do, we hate what they say, and we hate their intentions, and we hate what they believe in. But we don't hate them, their humanity, because that is what we need to appeal to. Because if they really understood the truth of their soul and of the quantum energy and the law and all this, then they wouldn't behave like that, you see, because so in that case, then there's something seriously wrong with them, and that's how because when you're in a really good society where nobody steals and nobody's, you know, doing wrong things to each other, you notice straight away if somebody's behaving out of order. So people would go, somebody's shouting, people will come and say, "Oh, what are you shouting for?" Come and see what the problem is to help them, not to judge them or stuff like that, but actually to help. And and this is the other thing. eh, the way to keep people down is by this judgment. There's a judgment going on all the time, and people meet each other, and the first thing they do is judge each other. I've seen it. Like they judge each other. They're measuring up against each other. They're doing this, that, and the other. And I mean, I have never done anything like that because for me, as I say, I was always the lowest of the low. That's why I couldn't even say my name. I was like total inferior. So I just looked up to everybody. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can end now. We can always do another one if you want. Yeah, 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 yeah. I was 12, yeah, yeah. But yeah, we can talk about all that on another video. But yeah, so that was my light being experience. And as I say, after that experience, I really was truly enlightened. I mean, I am enlightened. I understand so many things. And as I say, I'm just about to finish writing my book when I get back home, and which no, well, I think I did mention it, but I've got to finish writing it, so I'm not gonna go into any details about it. But well, no, it more or less covers, what I've learned, I think, about humanity, and it explains a bit of the goes into the gender constructs and stuff like that. So, yeah, and also looks at our understanding and interpretations of biblical stories, that have impacted our lives to the extent that all women were judged evil, uh, you know, but ultimately that we killed Jesus, and all this type of stuff because of the story of Eve, that women are wicked temptresses, and all children are born in original sin. That was the other thing that the Catholic Church, well, I won't say the Catholic Church because it wasn't the Catholic Church, it was the Roman Church. But that was the other thing that it delivered, was that all children are born in sin, in their mother's sin, because and Jesus was special because his mother was a virgin, you see, which is absolutely ridiculous. But that is their take on it, and so it did. It is responsible for the denigration of women. It was like, look, solid proof. Look, God has told. This is the judgment from God against women. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, just before we end, sorry, I do need to explain something. When I said the male is square, so what I understood, from the diagram, and then after the experience, I learned something else. So what I understood is that the male aspect of God is square intelligence, and the female aspect of God is circular. So that's the God and goddess, you see, and they fit together perfectly. The circle can be inside the square, can expand to contain the circle, or the circle can expand to contain the square. Like there's no problem. The square can get as big as it wants. The circle just get bigger and bigger. You know. Oh, did it? Oh, I didn't know. Oh, right. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I remember. Um, well, yeah, so I understood that the goddess, because I understood that there is a God and goddess, and that's clear in the Bible, when God said, "Let us make man in our own image," and set them, not him, set them to tame the earth. That's male and female, because God is both male and female, God and goddess. And I think that's another thing that people need to get their heads around, that when you're talking about God, you're talking about God and goddess, not just a male God. There's a female aspect of God as well, and it is every bit as powerful as the male aspect. They are equal and they work together. They actually love each other. They don't fight. Okay. And God is not constantly trying to overpower the female, and she's not constantly trying to overpower him. They work together perfectly. And so when it comes down to humanity, both the male and female are the triangles, but we do fit together like a Star of David. And the downward pointing triangle is the feminine, and the upward is the male. But that doesn't mean that one is lower than the other. It just means it fit together, and you make this lovely star that then fits in the circle of life, that then will also fit inside a square, you see. So it's because God is everything, God is ultimately all the intelligence of the universe. It's male and female. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that is and do you know, you've hit the nail on the head there, is that that is what women do. They do earth, you see. They do earth life and the male because she's connected because of she has to give birth. So she's connected to the cycles will all affect the woman a lot more than the man who is a bit disconnected because he's not the one carrying the babies and giving birth to them, you see. So he's consciously not as connected, but he's connected to the woman. And as much as he loves the woman and she connects him to the earth, you see, that's why he's connected once he's earthed, like you say, because she connects him to the reality of life. A lot of men would, oh, yeah, yeah. But, in African societies before colonization, women were very powerful. They owned the land. Mm, yeah, 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 yeah. That's it, yeah, that compassion, like I say, that is the cornerstone, and we are meant to live in a system of abundance, when God says, "Go forth and multiply." That's what we were meant to do, to multiply, and, if we live in balance with the law, there's never, ever gonna be too many people, because when you give people absolute freedom, a lot of people and even you can look at British society as an example. People don't want lots of children. People don't want them too early. They want to live their lives. They want to do this and that. They want to learn about things, or they don't, or they feel once people are properly educated, if we have proper education where children are taught how to be parents, what a 2-year-old child is, what a teenager is, like once people are properly educated, they don't want to take on the responsibilities of raising a child because it is a massive responsibility and it's a responsibility for life. And people are encouraged to just live very casually today without, oh yeah, I'm going to get pregnant, I'm going to have a baby. But a lot of people don't even know the first thing about actually raising a child and what it takes. And that you're not just having a baby. I remember one friend coming round and saying he's gonna, he was his partner's pregnant, and I said, "Oh, so that's it? You're gonna be a dad for the rest of your life now, then?" And I just saw the look on his face, like it hadn't even occurred to him that yes, so you're gonna be a dad. This baby's gonna grow up into an adult human being. That just the thought of that was just like, oh my gosh, you know. And I see a lot of people, they because of the way society works, they don't encourage us to think that far. See, oh, you don't think about that. Anything could happen. No, we're just in the here and now, which is fine to be in the here and now. But what you're doing in the here and now will have repercussions into the future. So if you're bringing a baby into the here and now, then you have to be aware that you're going to have an adult in the here and now at some stage in your life. You're going to have an adult child as well. Um, but yeah, because we're raising people, and to raise people, then we need to do it in a very compassionate and kind way, And I just feel our education system at the moment it's antiquated in the extreme. It's like it is Victorian, and everything Victorian is actually psychopathic as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you look at Victorian society, it's a total psychopathic society where people are living in absolute squalor. And, you know, there were so many good Victorian people that really struggled against all of that and fought for social housing and all of that that came out, you know, the reforms, sanitation and things like that, because of the good Victorian people that really pushed for it, you know. But capitalism, left to its own devices, will just you take everything it can and just throw people away, literally, just throw them away. Uh, is that what you can do now? Oh, it sounds lovely, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the law gives women's rights, obviously males' rights, children's rights, and eco rights, so, animal rights. So, you know, you have to do everything in a compassionate, merciful, and kind way. You approach everything in that way, and yeah, people that do things wrong, that upset other people, you know, commit crimes, then obviously there's something wrong with them, because why should somebody steal off something off somebody when, you know, there is no need to steal, because if you need a gardening implement, they're all there. You just go and get one. Yeah, plants, not punishment. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I think people just need help. A lot of these people in prison, they just need help. And as I say, we need to completely get rid of prohibition. Prohibition is the most evil law, and they knew it was evil when they did this prohibition against drugs, because they'd already tried it on alcohol. They saw all the horror that came from that, and then decided to keep it, because they had the corrupt police forces already from prohibition of alcohol. So it's like, well, how do we keep this corrupt police force going, because they were really useful actually. Oh yeah, right, we'll just put it onto narcotics. We'll create this thing called narcotics, and yeah, we'll stick marijuana in there as well. And it's just, it creates absolutely everything that's wrong with our society. I would say a lot of it falls down to prohibition, of the amount of people that have been empowered on the strength of it, you know. And then you've got people in power who are all sniffing and snorting coke, which is the most psychopathic drug going. I'm sorry, we need to stop prohibition. We need to remove, uh, well, like I've said, Zionism from politics. It's the ultimate narcissist, supremacist ideology. Is Zionism? It is. It's like the modern day Nazism. It no, yes, child rights, and it does all come down to the child. I think ultimately we need to look at the child and hold the child's hand. That's the way forward, is standing up for children's rights and making a society worthy of, to have a child, you know, because the children are not receiving anything like the attention and care they deserve. That's why I've said, people, by now, with the technology we have available to us, people should only be working 3 days a week. That's it. That's it. People should only have to work 3 days a week for somebody else, and the rest of the time we spend with the children and the community, community needs people as well. You can't run a community when people are working 5 days a week, and they've got to do everything they can on the weekend. No, sorry, no, this has to end. People have a 3-day working week that pays them a living wage, and the rest of the time is theirs for study, community stuff, having community, like you could do your own community eco power station, you know? Yeah, 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 yeah. Look, there's just very few wrong things to do. It's like, don't steal, don't kill, don't put people's lives in danger. You know, I mean, obviously, with things like medicine and stuff like that, they have their own protocols, don't they? That they have to operate by, you know. But it's like yeah, like with medical stuff, or if you're doing stuff like flying a plane, you've got certain rules and things that you've got to do, haven't you? So uh, and like medical ethics and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it does come down to that, to sticking by the law and standing by compassion, upholding compassion. And, in that way, we get to cherish all life. And at the moment, we're not cherishing all life. Life is not cherishing. We are not cherishing our planet. We're not cherishing ourselves. And it all extends from the self, you see. And that's why Jesus said, that is in everybody, because that Jesus, whether you believe in Jesus as a figure in history or not, Jesus simply represents the self within, you know, the pure self within. And as Muslim people believe that that's Prophet Muhammad is the self within, you know. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I don't know if we've got time, but after I had that experience, the light being, a couple months later, I did have a dream of Prophet Muhammad, and in that dream, he did have light shining out of his skin, and it was the same golden light, and that confirmed to me that Prophet Muhammad was also from the same source of energy as light being, So, and when I studied Prophet Muhammad, I did understand the purity of what he'd actually done, and how, over time things get like corrupted, don't they? All the religions have been corrupted. But he did stand, by giving woman the status of a cow. He was actually raising her status, which was previously she was valued less than a cow. But because he'd already said that men and women are equal before God, then he was basically saying men are cattle, you see. If the woman's a cow, then men are cattle. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Yeah. And the very good thing that he did was that he stopped hunting, because you've got to make sure an animal's fed and watered and all that before you kill it. So he effectively banned hunting without banning it, just by saying you have to do these things to an animal before you kill it. So hunting stopped basically, because you've got to pray, you've got to make sure the animal's fed and stuff like this. And the other thing that he did was yeah, that's it, exactly. Oh, I know. People just don't care. But that's it, we're living in that careless, throwaway world. And, yeah, Yeah, I know. But the other thing that Prophet Muhammad did that was absolutely fantastic was he liberated water because everybody had to have water at least 5 times a day, you know? So, that was an amazing thing because before he came, water was often controlled by, certain people. So these were the reasons why a lot of people fought against Islam because, and also he limited the amount of wives that rich men could have, you see, because before they could have limitless, they could have harems full of women, whereas Prophet Muhammad, he said, no, you can only have 4 wives, that's your maximum. And you've got to be wealthy enough to look after each one. And they have a choice. If they say no, they don't want you to take on this wife, then you can't. You've got to have their permission to get another wife. And you can only have up to 4 wives, you see. And they didn't like that, a lot of the rich people, because they weren't allowed to have slaves. Yeah. Oh, yes, yes, I'm just saying, the positive, uh, things that I think Prophet Muhammad was absolutely fantastic. What he did was amazing. Well, without Prophet Muhammad, then what happened to the African tribes people and stuff who all got enslaved, that's what would have happened to them. It was only because they had a holy book and the women were all covered up and they had this proper established faith that protected them from being judged heathen. Oh, I know. Well, Christianity, as we're saying before. Mm. Well, sort of. I mean, one thing I would say about the Muslim people is that they have kept a very strong sense of family around them and in their society, that they live near the family and they've got very strong family connections. Where, as you look at the Western world, we don't have that same type of ties. Well, no, we did used to have those ties though. I grew up in Where I grew up, all the family lived around us and everybody was like that. Families lived together, but it's the way that we've been programmed now and the way society has worked that people have all suddenly they all live apart in different places and it's difficult to get to see people, whereas before we all used to live in the same area, but it's just the way housing works now. Oh, yeah, well, the prophecies, like I say. I mean, look, we have a choice. The people of Nineveh proved that, we do have a choice about which prophecy we would like. I mean, there was Jonah, God puts him through all this stuff, going in a whale and what have you. He comes out, he gives them the prophecy, and then he's really fed up because the prophecy didn't come true. And God finds him sulking and he's like, why aren't you happy? And he said, well, you told me to say this, that, and that. And like none of it's happened. So it wasn't a prophecy. And God said, well, none of those things had to happen, did they? Because the people changed. The people asked for forgiveness. They said, please forgive us, God. Please don't give us this horrible prophecy. Please forgive us. So he said, you did because of you telling them what's going to happen. Because what he was doing was Jonah was actually God was telling the people through Jonah that look, if you keep doing all these bad things, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to have a really bad life. Everything's going to be terrible. So if you live by the law, by God's law, life's gonna get a lot better. So they live, "Oh, all right, yeah, please forgive us for doing them. We're gonna live by God's law." So that prophecy didn't have to happen. So the idea that, oh, I mean, God gave us free will. Why would God give us free will and then tell us what's going to happen? Uh, How does that make any sense? It doesn't make sense. Of course, none of the prophecies will come true unless we want them to come true, unless we make them come true, you know. And I think with Isaiah's prophecy of holding the hand of the little child, that's the prophecy we need to make come true. The prophecy that the globalists are trying to make come true is blooming Revelations, which is, Cerinthus's plagiarism, basically. This Greek Gnostic. He wrote Revelations. He just took bits out of all the Old Testament and clumped them together into his horrible Revelations, which actually is celebrating Lucifer, the reign of Lucifer. Yes, yeah, it's doom and gloom. It's doom and gloom. Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. So but it is, a doom and gloom that we're born into of like, oh, revelation, and then God's gonna do this and God's gonna do that. And it isn't God. It isn't God doing those things. That's people, you know. Do you want to do them things? Don't blame it on God. God is with humanity, which is when I say God, I'm talking about God, goddess, universal intelligence, and it is quantum energy, universal intelligence. So it's connecting with that. Yes. Yeah, God is love. God is God is love. And the law is love because the law, gives unconditional love, you see, because it's equal for everybody, whether you're a child or an animal, the law is there equally for everybody. It is a form of unconditional love. It is actually universal unconditional love for everybody. That's the law, you see, because life isn't fair. Nature isn't fair. Stuff happens. We live in a dynamic universe, all kinds of things that happen. And people need to understand that, look, this isn't because God's punishing you. This is just stuff that happens. But because you're with God, you will survive. Like Noah survived with his ark because he had the intuition and foresight to build his ark because he could see, oh, there's going to be a big change in the weather here. He sensed the storm. But a lot of people did. It wasn't just Noah, it was all around the world. It's been proven that they all have their own Noahs, you see. Yeah. Well, it actually wasn't a boat in the sense that we think of it. It was like a circular boat. It was I forget what it's called now, but it was a giant circular boat that they built because that's what they used then. Um, on some occasions, yes, on very serious crimes, then. But that then would have to be done as humanely as possible, like, you know yes, when people get angry and shout or tell people stuff, but I think, you know, like, yes, some people are, and if people talk in a way that's evil, that you would say is evil, then you would be like, "Well, I think you've got some serious issues going on there. I think you need to go and see a therapist," and have a chat. because yeah, yeah, I've got a doggy. I think he's come to say hello. She's there. Yeah. Oh, there you go, your numbers. Just the right number. Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll get off then, and it's been great talking to you, Jake, and, hopefully we'll do another little podcast soon. Yeah, yeah. Yes, let's do it more, and it's been great talking to you. Massive love. Bye.